Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Zoom episode of the Western Sydney Business Podcast. I'm joined by RGrove from the Property Council of Australia. G'day, Ross.
Hello, Tom. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. Thanks for being the first Zoom guest. Your initiative, by the way, so credit to you. This is good. Is this the way the future is at the moment?
Oh, look, I hope it's not completely this way. I'm for the online stuff, the solitary confinement stuff, maybe not so much.
No, definitely. You got a good point there. So your role within the Property Council of Australia, you're the Western Sydney Regional Director?
Correct.
And so what does that entail? You've been in there for about 10 months, I've seen through LinkedIn. So what is that role? It's a nice big title. What does that really encompass for us?
So we define Western Sydney as basically the diamond between Parramatta, Windsor, Penrith, and Wollondilly.
Yep.
So the central city.
It's a great triangle. Yeah.
Yeah, plus the Western City in GSC terms. It's basically what the man on the street would define it as.
Yep.
Property industry employs just over 1 in 10. Creates 1 in 10 local jobs in Western Sydney. And my job at the Property Council is to work with our members in Western Sydney. Yep. And to represent the views of the industry to government at a local and a state level.
Yeah, so you represent the property industry, it seems, as a whole in not just Western Sydney, but obviously the Property Council of Australia throughout the country. Is that right?
Correct.
Fantastic. Sounds like quite a busy job. You're like the advocate for the property of Western Sydney.
Yes, and so that covers everything from contributions, planning reform, taxation, future infrastructure. You look. Most economic activity occurs on some form of property.
Absolutely, somewhere. It is really the lifeblood.
When you're looking at the future of a region, how it arranges and distributes and manages property is a particularly important thing.
Yep, no, absolutely. Well, in light of this coronavirus and COVID-19, has that changed anything in Western Sydney that you can see?
Look, it's I think just talking to government and talking to our members. We're seeing an enormous, acts of goodwill between government and the industry, and I think that's reflective of the fact that the property industry will be is an important industry now, and will have an even more important role in the economic recovery, and so. You've got both local government and state government, and various arms of both. All working to ensure there is a strong pipeline of work, currently available and available into that rebound. I've spent my first fortnight in Fortress Westmead. Just picking up the phone to council planners, just checking in to say, how is the transition going from your perspective? What does the Department of Planning need to do? What immediate obstacles do you have? What future obstacles? Depending on how much further, what further regulatory changes come and can be anticipated. What are the obstacles? How can we keep the system moving as efficiently as possible? Everyone's on the same page in that space. You're not getting as much conflict between different levels of government. You're not seeing conflict necessarily between private sector and the public sector. Everyone understands that there's an outcome that needs to be reached.
It seems like there's a lot less red tape going on, right?
And look, to the government's credit, they've moved the legal instruments around to facilitate online council meetings, online planning panel meetings. They've flexed the hours of operations, both for the entire logistics supply chain from port right through to the
I must say I've been very, very impressed.
And construction has extended its hours into the weekend so that construction can still occur while preserving a degree of social distancing.
And that's probably the hardest part, right? Of constructions. It's still going on. It's an essential service. Like, what do you do, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's essential that it continue. I was actually a little bit afraid mid-afternoon that this podcast would have been interrupted by some background construction noise, and I thought this is a good problem to have. While that's still going, I can be happy. Our industry can be happy. I think it's one of those things. Construction, by definition, for the most part, is outdoors. You can maintain those levels of distance, and with the appropriate procedures in place, you can ensure a healthy workplace. So, our industry's always looking to improve in that space. Our federal team has a working group in that space just to ensure that we're that the industry is at best practice. So that incidents are managed and resolved.
It's all trying to minimize it as best you can, really. Construction still needs to keep ticking along.
Well, hospitals have to get built, schools have to get built, and in many cases, and I'll look to Parramatta as an example. With much of I suppose ground level retail on places like Church Street closed. It's pleasing to see the government getting on with the job of delivering the Parramatta Light Rail. Using this opportunity to get critical infrastructure.
We sort of stopped. Every day the Church Street retail may have stopped. They're still building the much needed infrastructure for these areas. If that stops, well, then really all these places just do stop.
Correct, and one of the advantages that Church Street has is they've had notification from months on months away that they're going to need to transition in many cases to a delivery service anyway.
That's good.
So there are some silver linings there, but we're very keen to keep the industry moving and to ensure that the next 18 months is stronger than our current.
And I think credit to a lot of businesses, like they're adapting. They are doing what they have to do. And for example, I saw that Property Council of Australia, you guys have a live stream seminar happening in April. So you guys are adapting to the way it's got to be. It's just we're all finding ways to make it work.
And look, we've been negotiating. So we had a pretty comprehensive schedule of events. I had an all-day session planned at Bankwest Stadium for May,
stadium,
which has obviously been postponed. But we're keeping our conversations going. We're postponing events rather than cancelling them. And we're just shifting that timeline out. And we're looking at new ways to deliver content online, because Western Sydney is not going to be short of content. There are a number of councils putting together housing strategies following the preparation of their LSPS. There's the City of Parramatta Council will have a CBD planning proposal.
All this stuff's still going on. Look at the Western Sydney Airport. That's probably I would say Western Sydney's biggest project that's going on at the moment.
And I think by ways of opportunities, there is a great time, particularly for some less active parts of government who are seeing less business, to do some of that backlog work, to do that work that will produce a long-term dividend that doesn't necessarily get done on day-to-day workloads. Aerotropolis planning is going full steam ahead, and it would have gone full steam ahead either way. I think the Mamre Road, there's an industrial or future industrial precinct set to go in there. And I think that will take on a heightened priority going forward, because
that's good.
we've got members in that space who have immediate aspirations for that land.
Of course,
the
yeah.
supply of industrial land is critical to the future of Sydney. And most people don't think industrial property is a particularly sexy topic. But if you're trying to get groceries, if you're trying to get toilet paper,
That's
you
true,
need to put it in a warehouse.
Yeah. You're 100% right.
It's it's really quite central to the way we live.
It is true. It's a foundation. It really is a foundational property. Industrial property sort of gets, I wouldn't say overlooked by investors, but it's a real niche. Industrial is its own real niche from that point of view.
Yeah. So I think that'll be a strong priority for government. We've been keen to advocate that precinct be expedited ahead of the Aerotropolis.
And that's probably why the Man Road precinct, became its own separate precinct, got its own draft structure plan, and largely because they could just bring services down from Erskine Park. A lot of the major players have already secured land in the area, so may as well just speed it up, save waiting for the Aerotropolis plans. Yeah.
And look, there are some issues in the government's proposal that we're working with them on, and we're expecting probably pretty good outcome going forward.
Yep, great. So, what projects are you guys working on at the moment?
So we've had some interesting changes coming into the Property Council at this stage. We actually lost our Deputy Executive Director in William Power. He's taken a leave of absence to go into the Department of Planning, and I talk about that goodwill exercise at the Department of Planning, coordinate external stakeholder engagement for the Department of Planning's COVID-19 response.
Wow.
That's a bad news story, and it's a good news story. It's a very good news story for the industry as a whole. It's meant that I've taken on additional responsibilities for retirement living in the industrial sector, which has a great overlap with Western Sydney as is.
Definitely.
That's where the future land supply is going to come from. On the advocacy space, as I identified earlier, a number of councils are putting together their housing strategies. Where we're providing feedback into them. We put signature to Cumberland's. We finalised Cumberland's submission last week. We also have. We're expecting an announcement for a place-based infrastructure compact over the coming weeks to months for the Aerotropolis. That'll be an interesting document.
With the Aerotropolis, segues me into something I wanted to ask you. You actually published a piece talking about why Western Sydney needs rail when it opens. I was pretty peeved when I sort of saw these things happening. It's just ridiculous. So you wrote a very elaborate piece, much more elaborate than I could ever talk about. So please, can you run us through that and why Western Sydney needs rail when it opens?
So look, I've been a passionate advocate for the airport since before it was cool in Western Sydney. I was involved in the Western Sydney Airport Alliance when it was formed. I was the Mayor of Holroyd at the time, and it was a mixture of the New South Wales Business Chamber, the CFMEU, a bit of local government, some community stakeholders, and some more union stakeholders. So we wanted a broad mix of the Western Sydney community to say, look, this is our airport. We want this.
Yeah.
I remember being in a briefing with Jamie Briggs, who at the time was the infrastructure minister, and he said, look, we're going to make the announcement for the airport. It's going to be it'll have a master plan attached to it, but you can expect a one runway airport, about the same size as Adelaide's airport or the Gold Coast airport. You won't have any rail, and you won't need any rail. And in many ways, I agree with that assessment. For an airport, you don't need rail. Gold Coast Airport, you don't need rail. Melbourne Airport probably needs it now.
I would say,
when you opened it. But if you're going to deliver an Aerotropolis precinct, if you're going to open up centres of employment, if you're going to have commercial office space, if you're going to have high-tech manufacturing, if you're going to and not have a huge amount of residential, people need to come into the Aerotropolis to work. The Aerotropolis Authority has a jobs target of 200,000 jobs across the Western City. If you're going to deliver all those jobs, you actually need to get people, you need to get a highly skilled workforce into those job destinations.
Absolutely.
And so, could the airport live without a rail link? Possibly, but Western Sydney's future jobs potential, it's not going to be as easily realised.
Yeah, and it absolutely needs it.
Yeah, I think too, when you look at the commercial case for an airport, this is a government business enterprise at the moment. An airport, once it's transferred from government ownership, will have a higher transaction value being connected into Sydney's rail network.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And
good point.
If you're trying to make the case for transferring an airport from government ownership, you want to be able to demonstrate years of success. And certainly that airport would be a whole lot more successful if it lived on an airport line. That being said,
absolutely.
the Liverpool's fast corridor, Liverpool Council, they're doing magnificent work, and that fast corridor. I used to say Liverpool Council do an excellent job selling the Liverpool
without doubt,
dream.
Without doubt.
And you can go to some parts of Liverpool and you think, wow, they sell it so well, but this place really needs a high frequency connection to
it definitely does. We don't need more cars coming into Liverpool
to make that dream fully realised.
Yeah,
so,
and I think they are pushing. That's why they're pushing ahead with the 15th Avenue Smart Transit Corridor on their own, because similarly they have no rail connection to the Western Sydney Airport, but they have a direct straight line. And it's great to see them utilising it themselves.
Yeah. And I think too, sorry, I just lost my track. So when we're looking at this airport, it's, people are kicking the tires around the airport. We've got, large financial institutions. The Property Council held a series of industry tours, a day of tours, in partnership with the airport. Where we had our members, people who are investors and large property owners come and visit the airport just to see what potential the airport's being delivered. And I think this is when I wrote the piece that you referred to. The airport's doing pretty well on its current construction timeline. It's either on schedule or it's ahead of schedule. There's no evidence at this stage with respect to the rail corridor planning. Government hasn't made an announcement around the Sydney Metro Greater West stations, which is essential to activating the precincts in the Aerotropolis. You create a completely different precinct plan if you've got a station box on your on your
absolutely.
And when it comes to precinct planning. You also want to know where the rail corridor is going to go, so that you're not.
So you can plan the precinct accordingly.
Conflict with essential infrastructure and all that stuff. So it's got to happen. The city deal sets a time frame for it to occur. I think the government is inside the time frame now. Although every day that goes past, they're getting closer to that deadline, and there are less opportunities to make an announcement in that space. Now that corridor is naturally rail is a state responsibility. I understand there is a discussion because the feds are co-funding that corridor. There's a discussion with the state and the feds. But really getting that certainty will help future precinct planning and the activation of that Aerotropolis.
Yeah, because I remember some of the initial planning documentation stated that the rezonings and, as you said, the precinct plans will be in conjunction with the station locations. Isn't that, as you said, that's going to throw a huge spanner in the works if that doesn't occur?
Yeah, and I think too, you'll find, particularly if the Greater Parramatta place-based infrastructure compact is anything to go by, you will find that the place-based infrastructure compact, or the PIC, for the Aerotropolis will seek to align precinct planning and the unlocking of green zone opportunities to the delivery of that transport infrastructure. And I'd say part of the reason I put that piece out initially was, we went from the Aerotropolis land use and
infrastructure plan, implementation plan,
the LUIP. We had stage 1 and we're expecting stage 2. We got stage 2 in the form of the Western Sydney Aerotropolis plan, which was a good plan. But we noticed that it was quite clearly rebranded from LUIP stage 2.
Basically, with a couple of new initial precincts,
So a good chunk of our submission was, look, there's a lot of good stuff here, and you've mapped out what the next steps are going to be, and we're very supportive of this. And I would say also with the Aerotropolis, great work from both Penrith and Liverpool Council.
Totally, totally.
I don't agree with everything in those submissions, but the Property Council had certainly adopted some of the recommendations of both of those agencies into our submission, particularly around making land use more flexible to attract more investment. But look, just going back to that, it was just a case of, we need to start refining the infrastructure corridors in order to provide certainty to our members. That's quite important.
Do you, and I'm completely spitballing here, is COVID-19 going to have any impact on this? Going to have any impact on the planning, or delay this process in any way, do you think?
Look, I don't want to speculate too much on what the Department of Planning's future work is going to be, other than to note the existing comments from the Minister and others in planning, that the Department of Planning is really using this opportunity to accelerate growth and to make things happen. Just on that note, the Property Council's advocacy in that space, we're meeting with the department, senior officials from the department on a weekly basis. We have put forward a list of projects which have been compiled by all of our members on projects in the system which could be made shovel ready. You sort of just unstick a number of holdups in the planning system. And Minister Stokes, to his credit, and we've been pushing this for a couple of years now, is looking to adopt Queensland's model for a state assessment and referral agency, and that in many ways, and it was flagged by former Planning Minister Hazzard in his green paper. It's a one-stop shop for managing referrals to other government agencies. So, without wanting to, there are some good and certainly improving state government agencies. But quite often, local government will say green light. Planning will say this looks good. We've got to get the opinion of either a utilities provider or an infrastructure provider or a semi-unrelated government agency. Hold up in that space. And the intent of that unit will be to troubleshoot those problems and manage the feedback from those agencies as quickly as possible.
Which is essentially fast tracking the DAs. Rob Stokes basically mentioned that.
And I think just getting good and consistent feedback too. I can understand why government agencies would sort of not necessarily be enthusiastic normally in this space. Like if you're a government agency who's you're not collecting fees, it's not your 100% your core business. If you're getting snowed under with application plus application plus application, your duty is to some other part of your mission statement, but you've had this cross your desk. I think that's why it's important to have a Queensland's model of the and you'll hear about this more in coming months. Queensland call it SARA, State Assessment and Referral Agency. And as that comes online, the intention of that is to unlock some of the hurdles in the planning process that are external to the approval body.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a welcome change for basically everybody. From my point of view, as a sales agent, from the very beginning through the developers and then the planners, I think everybody's going to be welcoming that change. That's fantastic. Fantastic. What challenges does Western Sydney have at the moment?
It's a very broad question.
Yeah.
Look, I think when you look at Western Sydney as a whole, we have the opportunity to create a great lifestyle opportunity. And when I say that, I think right now we're not a 30-minute city.
No.
Much of Sydney is not a 30-minute city. If we are able, and this is why I was such an enthusiastic advocate over almost a decade now for the airport.
Yeah.
If we're able to create those jobs closer to home, that will change our lifestyle completely. Shorter commute, more time with the family. Less time, less of that distance. And right now we've probably got not enough distance in many cases.
Yeah.
But that will improve our social fabric, our economic fabric.
Yeah.
And so the question is, beyond the airport itself, beyond a substantial investment from Western Sydney University, what are the other key job spinners in Western Sydney? And as important as logistics is, it's not known for its job density.
Absolutely.
Its future trajectory it makes it even more so. So it's a case of how do we align some of those investment decisions to attract new players in? And you look at the Aerotropolis Authority and they're signing MOUs with Hitachi and other high tech players. I think that's a good start, and I think it'll be interesting to watch that tree begin to bear fruit. I think starting to see some of that stuff snowball will be incredibly good for Western Sydney. I'm not completely skeptical of the MOUs. I look at the city of Parramatta. I live in Westmead. I grew up in Greystanes. It is a very different CBD to what it was even 5 years ago. It is achieving that critical mass. Much of it has come as a result of government decentralisation policies, but the private sector is following, and it's doing incredibly well with its office market report performance.
Definitely.
Some of its indicators are outperforming that of Brisbane. In many ways, it's Sydney, Melbourne, and Parramatta. And so when people think that some of the Aerotropolis initiatives are pie in the sky, I just think back and I think, well, some of us had that view of Parramatta not too long ago.
It's all perspective, right? When you contextualize the perspective, you need to. This is the grassroots. It might take 10 years, 15 years, 20 years before it's, what we consider Parramatta today. But I think Western Sydney has got the bones to make it happen without question.
Yeah, and I think I'd also point, particularly to people. I know you come from an architectural family. Probably two key phrases when you think of, I suppose, particularly out of Western Sydney, that will probably shape the way, will change the way that the region is shaped. Will be that phrase, Western Parkland City. I think good developers, good planners, people who are looking for speedy or enthusiastic approvals need to have that phrase in the back of their head.
Western Parkland City,
A new phrase which I saw in the Aerotropolis plan, which I suspect we're going to hear a lot more of, is the concept of landscape-led development.
Landscape-led development.
Correct. So that Aerotropolis area has a number of, I suppose, peaks, hills, and
It's lovely. It's
some
stunning.
parkland
Yeah,
runs
yeah,
through it. It's got the waterways,
yeah.
which aren't exactly Paris at the moment,
No.
anything but. But if you just take those three words, right, and you read the DCP and the future DCP changes, they're going to be talking about fronting, housing onto natural beauty.
Yeah.
They're going to be looking at preserving ridgelines for views. If you let those words shape the site that you're looking at, you're probably reading what the regulatory documents say.
Yeah.
Without reading them. I think that's a new phrase which will catch on.
Yeah.
The more people start to observe what's in the Aerotropolis plan.
Yeah, because
I think that's a government aspiration for much of that Western Parkland city.
Yeah, I think, look, the nature out there has a beauty without question. Like if you go to London, for example, it's an absolutely stunning area. And it's sometimes a bit of a shame to think, oh, well, all this is going to be gone. But I think they do need to preserve some of this. They do need to really highlight how awesome and how grandeur the nature is out there. I think you're spot on. Landscape-led development. I really like that phrase.
Yep. Yeah, it features quite well throughout that Aerotropolis document. I got some reference materials. I don't think, it's this one.
Yeah,
all the way through. Actually, no, that's the set one, but it looks the same.
Yeah, there's 4 documents. They look the
same. It's certainly the bullet points under all match that overarching theme.
Yeah, it's a very, very exciting precinct. 2026 should be up. The airport should be open.
Yeah. Hey, the other interesting discussion I think we're going to have in Western Sydney over the coming months to years, I think it'll be around water. I think the drought period that we're going through, or we've just been through, the resilience of our current water supply and how it will line up with our future population growth, I think is incredibly important. It's a discussion we need to have. I think when you look around government decisions like desal and decisions to expand the desal plant, I think we've got to look at how we manage water in our greenfields sites. What capacity is there to create a purple pipe network to funnel water around for sports grounds? Use water that's already in the space. Also potentially a broader water recycling agenda.
Which is good.
The fundamentals of that are being looked at in the Aerotropolis at the moment. I think the rest of the community needs to be taken along as part of that journey, so they understand that water supply is being protected. Sydney Water also has a proposal before IPART around its future pricing. And we're reviewing that at the moment, as well as the future projects, future infrastructure that will be included as part of that pricing plan. We might check in a couple of weeks or months for a separate update on that one. I'm still working through that. I suspect there's one big conversation piece, particularly for southwestern Sydney, that we could be having, but we're not ready to go on that one yet.
Yeah, fair. So, all right, that's been a quite in-depth discussion. We hit Western Sydney Airport, a bit of construction, what the councils are all doing. Is there anything else you want to leave us with?
Look, I think we've got a pretty strong, pretty strong discussion. To our members who are tuning into this podcast, yes, we have gone out and sought from our members a list of projects that the Department of Planning could work on to activate the economy over the coming months.
Yep.
I'd provide some guidance as to how they're likely to be assessed by government. Government's obviously looking for timeliness. They're looking for a stimulus outcome.
Yep.
They're looking for job creation as a potential, both construction jobs and jobs after the fact. We kind of discussed that when we talked about Western Sydney's challenges, and what public good would be achieved by prioritising those projects. We are still very keen to hear more feedback from our members. If members feel like they've missed the opportunity to submit a project,
yep.
Certainly send it through. This is a fairly unique time in our history.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, it's very much, I compare it to the Olympics, because it's one of those cases of, we need all hands on deck.
Certainly.
To make this work into the future. That's the culture which has gone through all the agencies of government, including local government. It's shared by our industry.
Mm-hmm.
We're keen to do our part to achieve the best possible outcome.
Thank you very much. That you've given us a great overview. I've loved the discussion. I'll have, for anybody listening, I'll have Ross's details in the show notes. And Ross, I look forward to having you on another episode of the podcast.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks very much. See you later. Have a nice night.
You too.